What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to a new video. So today we will be discussing one of my personal favorite genuses of snakes, that being Pituophis. You've probably seen a lot of these guys in my videos, but I have never done one fully dedicated to them. I love these snakes for a lot of different reasons. We'll go over them in the video. And I personally think they're one of the best pet snakes in the entire world and often overlooked in that discussion of the best pet snake. So I'm gonna show you guys a lot of my animals, a wide variety from within the genus, and just tell you why they are as amazing as they are. All right, so to start us off, we're going to talk about pine snakes a little bit. This right here is an Ocean County, New Jersey, northern pine snake. So they're pine snakes that are in the US and in Mexico. The ones that are in the US are more on the eastern portion of the country. The animals like this one that come from New Jersey are essentially the upper end of that range. They'll go down the coast all the way down through Florida, where you get the Florida or the southern pine snake. Northern pine snakes will exist in the Carolinas, Georgia, Tennessee, southern Kentucky, and then as you go a little bit west through southern Alabama and Mississippi, that's where you get the black pine snakes, and then to Louisiana, obviously you get the Louisiana pine snakes. They're really big, robust animals, a lot of individuals within this range getting between 6 to 7 feet as a full-grown animal. This girl right here is probably a little over 4 feet long, but she's just over a year old. They grow pretty fast as well, and they are just absolutely amazing. They have beautiful pattern, this really cool bulldog head with that kind of pointed snout there at the end. They're just absolutely gorgeous. Some of the New Jersey animals, particularly the ones from Ocean County, like this individual, are known for this really stark black and white contrast, which is so hard to beat. So to start it off with a bang, northern pine snakes, the US pines in general, are one of my favorite of the genus. All right, so we just took a look at a northern pine snake, and now here's a Mexican pine snake. Some of you guys may recognize her. This is my adult female that has produced a few different clutches for me, and she is just absolutely stunning. Probably my favorite example of this species I've ever seen. So the Mexican pine snakes, different from the US pine snakes, are a good bit smaller and a little bit more slender bodied. Obviously she's an adult female. She could theoretically get bigger, but for a captive genus, this is perfect size. She's about 5.5 feet long or so. These guys obviously are from Mexico, kind of in the highland areas, central to northern Mexico, kind of following the mountain ranges, and they are just absolutely amazing. This is a northern Mexican pine snake, so the ones from up north, generally speaking, are a little bit more vibrant colored like this, some more orange, some more red, and the ones that are further down south, more towards Durango, they get a little bit more of a pale white coloration to them. Those are the depii, these are depii genii, equally as beautiful, and a more rare subspecies within the hobby, one that I would love to be able to get my hands on one day, but definitely smaller than the US pine snakes. Very beautiful in a different way, but in their own right, absolutely amazing. One of my personal favorites. All right, so now on to bull snakes. This right here is my adult female Kankakee bull snake. She's a small adult, but an adult nonetheless, and she bred for me this year. So bull snakes come from a little bit further west in the US than the pine snakes do. This right here is a Kankakee locality animal, Kankakee, Illinois, particularly special to me considering it is very close to where I grew up in the city of Chicago. But that is almost the eastern extent of their range. They go a little bit over the border into Indiana, but that's really about it as far as the eastern extent of the range, but they have a really, really wide range. Basically east to west, starting in Indiana, going all the way to Montana, a little bit into Canada, above Montana, and then all the way down the US, through Brownsville, Texas, barely into Mexico. They have an absolutely massive range and are pretty variable throughout that range as well. This locality is known for their really cool dark black coloration with a little bit of that red coming in on the side, which I think is absolutely incredible. Bull snakes are also the species that have the most morphs of any of the Pituophis. Literally dozens of different color mutations within this species. So if you're a morph fan, bull snakes are probably for you. There are morphs within some of the different pine snakes, a lot of the gopher snakes, particularly San Diego gopher snakes, which we will get into, have a lot of morphs, but the bull snakes are definitely one that are morph heavy. Personally, I really prefer this wild type look of the Kankakee. A really cool difference between the two of them is while they do get to a similar size, the US pine snakes will have smaller clutches of really big eggs, particularly the Louisiana pine snakes and the black pine snakes, where the bull snakes have bigger clutches of smaller eggs. So it's really interesting. It must be something to fit their geographic niche differences. but just kind of an interesting anecdote about them. They are very similar in a lot of ways, but in some ways have some cool differences as well, which is something that I really do enjoy about them. All right, so now third we have gopher snakes. This right here is an Envy Snow San Diego gopher snake. And essentially you can almost split North America in thirds with the distribution of pines, bulls, and gophers. Not exactly, but the gophers, as far as the US go, take up most of the western portion of the country. So kind of at the western edge of the bull snake range, all the way to the west coast, you will get a handful of different subspecies of gopher snakes. Obviously, this one right here is a San Diego gopher snake, so from the greater San Diego area. But you get them all the way up through Washington, barely into Canada, and then all the way down through Baja California, Mexico. And then the further east you go into Mexico, there's a bit of a gap in the range, and then you get the lineaticalis gophers, and then the Gibsoni, which are into Guatemala. So those are very beautiful animals. But this right here, San Diego gopher snake, they're a little bit smaller generally than the bull snakes and the northern pine snakes, 5 feet or so being adult size. Much smaller heads, much more of a slight head structure than the northern pines, southern pines, or the bull snakes, which makes it very interesting. So, a gopher snake can be a great option for somebody who is interested in Pituophis, kind of wants a lot of the different characteristics, but maybe doesn't have room for a 6 or 7 foot bull snake or pine snake. And these guys in particular, the San Diegos, have a lot of different morphs, like this one right here. It's a double recessive gene. The wild types are absolutely beautiful as well. There's a lot to pick from within gopher snakes. So this here is my holdback male Mexican pine snake from my clutch this year. And this guy is a few months old, has already had a few sheds, but we'll throw a picture on the screen of the babies from when they hatched. What's really cool about Mexican pine snakes in particular, but really the whole Pituophis genus, is that they are born with some pretty good size on them relative to other colubrids, be it corn snakes or a bunch of the different king snakes that are often considered good starter colubrids, which they all are. But what's nice about these baby Pituophis is that they're born in the size where they're eating a fuzzy mouse right off the jump. And frankly, I've never had a baby refuse its first meal, frozen, thawed, live, whatever you have for it, which is really nice considering a lot of times with some of the other colubrids, even hognose snakes, that when they're babies, they can be kind of picky feeders, where oftentimes these species in the wild are going to be starting on frogs or lizards when they're born, as opposed to rodents like we tend to feed in captivity. But with a lot of these Pituophis, they are ready to go on rodents right away that are readily available, where sometimes the really tiny pinky mice can be difficult to obtain. It's one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of the Pituophis and why I love breeding them, is that when it comes to feeding, they are a walk in the park, extremely easy, which is also very good for a pet owner, somebody who might be a little bit stressed out by their pet snake not eating. A lot of us more seasoned reptile keepers aren't necessarily fazed by that, but as a former new keeper, I remember the days of being really stressed out by my snakes not eating. So with these guys, that really eliminates that problem almost completely. All right, so here is a baby male Kentucky northern pine snake, and we'll get into some detail about the Kentucky northern locality a little bit later on in the video, but for now, this guy's a great way to display the neonate size of the northern pine snake. This guy is a couple months old, but was a little bit smaller, as I was told, as a baby when he hatched out. But the northern pine snakes can definitely hatch out at this size, taking a hopper mouse, not even bigger. The black pines, and especially the Louisiana pines, will hatch out sometimes even bigger than this individual right here, being able to take almost a medium mouse right out of the egg. It's one of the coolest aspects about northern pine snakes, and then down south into the black pine and Louisiana pine populations, even the southern pines as well, is just how big they are as babies. They have smaller clutches of really big eggs, and that results obviously in really, really big offspring. So definitely eliminates that issue of feeding a baby colubrid. They eat very readily on rodents right away and are super easy to take care of when they're young. So here is my female flameline stillwater hypo bull snake. Really cool. That is both a locality specific and a morph. Absolutely gorgeous, where it has that red influence as well as the hypo. But one of the things about Pituophis that I really love is just how easy they are to take care of. As far as a beginner snake goes, care-wise, you really can't get much easier than a Pituophis. Considering that they are North American species, they are very cold tolerant and are overall very hardy to a lot of different conditions. So generally speaking, for temperatures, they do very well in the 70s, really at almost any point. They can very easily be kept in really any apartment, house as a pet, and you don't need to be very specific about their temperature or humidity, considering that really they are very much accustomed to the climate where most of us live here in the US and even some European countries as well. They are also great because they are a very diurnally active snake. So where you can set up a nice little display enclosure for them and they are going to utilize it and be a really cool display animal, kind of contrary to what you see with ball pythons, although they're beautiful and I love ball pythons. They really don't do a whole lot. Or something like a hognose snake that is somewhat fossorial and likes to hide a lot, dig, bury themselves. A bull snake, pine snake, gopher snake will be out and active, and they really don't need supplemental heating for the most part unless you're keeping them in a particularly cold space, which probably wouldn't be recommended really to begin with. But if you're a pet owner who likes to use UV lighting for your animal, most of those bulbs that are on the market do emit at least a little bit of heat, if not a decent amount of heat, and that's all you would really need to maintain their thermodynamic needs. And while they can get to a decent size, they're not huge snakes to where you need an absolutely giant enclosure for them. As with most snakes, but definitely for these guys, the more space you want to give them, the better. They will utilize it. But if you are a person living in an apartment, this snake is definitely not too large for the space that you have. You can really set up something that's absolutely beautiful, complements the animal well, makes for a great centerpiece in your home. All right, so this right here is a Kingsville Red zipper bull snake. So the Kingsville Red is a very well-known locality, essentially color phase. They get this really amazing deep red color with age. And then this right here, the zipper, is a recessive morph. So this animal is from Keith McPeak. And as Keith was explaining to me, this zipper morph just kind of popped up in the lineage of Kingsville Red bulls that he got his breeding stock from. And it is just absolutely stunning. So as you can see, the zipper gene gives it much higher density of banding throughout the dorsal, throughout the entire body. So if you compare this to a normal red bull snake, it has many, many more bands throughout the body. And like I said, this is a recessive gene. Bull snakes have lots of different morphs, and I have to imagine over time this zipper will be taken into many different morph projects within bull snakes. For me personally, I will probably just try to refine this red zipper look as best as possible. Obviously this animal is young, so the red coloration has not come in yet. We'll throw a picture up of Keith's adult that produced this individual just to see how absolutely gorgeous they are. But a really amazing individual, a great example of a morph that popped out of a locality as well, which I think is really cool. One that is just one of my absolute favorites. So this is my male Ocean County Northern Pine Snake. He's a really outstanding example of this locality. That red in his tail is just fantastic. And one of the things I love the most about Pituophis are all the different locality variations that exist within the genus. For any of you guys who've watched any of my videos, you know how obsessed I am with scrub pythons and montane rattlesnakes. And one of the aspects of those two genuses that really got my attention were all the different locality variation, just from place to place, seeing how they vary in slight ways, then learning the habitat differences that make those different variations advantageous. I think that's all very fascinating. And Pituophis are right in line with that, without a doubt. Where without morphs, they have so much variety just naturally throughout their range. Of course, I like the morphs as well, but I think if I had to pick one over the other, I'm partial to some of these locality type differences like this. This animal right here is just amazing. And all the line breeding that has been done with this locality has made them into just some of the most beautiful snakes in the entire world. But with that said, they are still absolutely stunning in the wild, something that I would love to see in person one day. Some of you guys probably recognize this snake. I've shown him off in a few videos. This is my male red-phased northern pine snake. And this animal right here is a great example of a line bred project within a locality of a species. So obviously this is a northern pine snake, and this project right here, specifically with the reds, is one that was started by Jay Jacoby. And for anybody who listens to my podcast, Cush's Corner on the Trap Talk Reptile Network, I just talked to Jay this Wednesday, and we actually went over the story of the origination of this line, which was really fascinating. But this red phenotype animal is one that naturally occurs in New Jersey, but Jay just took some spectacular red animals from a few different sources, put them together, and started this lineage. So that's something that I'm very much akin to with my scrub python projects, where I'm doing something very similar, taking some of the nicest natural phenotypes, line breeding them to get a specific look. That's exactly what Jay did here with these red northerns. With that said, though, there are projects like this within the entirety of the Pituophis genus, and there are probably also some that haven't even been started yet. So stuff like that is why I really get deeply invested into a species or a genus project within snakes, and one that is as beautiful as this is definitely going to catch my attention. All right, so here's one of my black pine snakes, one of my absolute favorite pine snakes. And as you guys have probably seen throughout this video, all of these individuals that I have are really, really well-mannered, well-behaved snakes. Pituophis as a whole are pretty calm animals, handle well, and another reason why I think they make good pets. Sometimes babies, and particularly with bull snakes, will do this kind of open mouth, hissing defense mechanism, which can be a bit intimidating, especially to a newer keeper. That could definitely be a bit of a deterrent. But as they get a little bit older, this is really how they act. And like I said, that's primarily a defense mechanism you see within the bull snakes, even though some of the pine snakes will show it as well in others. But as you can see with this guy right here, super chill. Black pine to me are really special for a lot of reasons, but you know, everyone loves a black snake. Like the Mexican black king snakes are very popular pets. I think as far as a black colubrid goes, I think it's hard to beat this right here, especially for a New World species. They are just amazing, and they can get pretty decent size as well. On my podcast with Jay Jacoby, he was speaking about some of his animals. You know, he has 7-foot individuals, and one thing that's really cool about black pines, but really about Pituophis in general, what he was saying on the podcast was he had individuals that were confirmed over 40 years old in his collection of black pines. So these are really long-lived individuals, which is great considering you can get an animal and have it as part of your life for a very long time. And you know, a party large-bodied colubrid like this to me is one of the most fun reptiles to keep, and another reason why I just absolutely love these snakes. So another thing that I love about Pituophis are stories like this animal right here. So this is one of my female Kentucky northern pine snakes. And while throughout the range of northern pine snakes, they are pretty plentiful in some areas, in Kentucky they are extremely rare, potentially by population, the least common wildly occurring snake in North America, which is saying something. And this animal right here was produced by Craig Trumbauer, an absolute legend of the industry. What's really special about the Kentucky pine snakes, and this could be a good topic for a deeper dive in a further video, is that their entire captive stock comes from 4 animals that were ever collected out of the wild. And this animal right here that was produced by Craig Trumbauer is unrelated partially to most of the stock in the US. The most recent animal that was collected, I believe, came out of Lyon County, Kentucky. And that animal is the mom of this clutch and the baby right here. So the male you saw earlier in the video is a sibling to this one. We'll throw up the picture of the dad on the screen. That is one of Craig's incredible Kentucky Northerns that is just huge, vibrant, and to me, just everything I'd want out of one of these. Really cool to have a locality in the collection that is tied to such an important conservation project for one of the most amazing US native snakes, an animal that is crucial to its ecosystem and just one of the most beautiful animals we have here in North America. All right, everybody, thank you for tuning into that video. If you liked it, please subscribe here on the YouTube channel. Like, comment, share, do all that good stuff. Hit the notification bell. I do drop a new video every single Friday. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Instagram at Scrub Shepherd, Stephen Cush on Facebook. I'm also on Morph Market under Cush Reptile. There you can find some of my available animals. I also host a podcast every single Wednesday night on the Trap Talk Reptile Network called Cush's Corner. All of the links to all of that is down in the description. Again, thank you guys for checking out the video, and I'll catch you all back here next week for a new one.